CRO Wisdom Pod, guys, with Johnny Page. Johnny is CRO at SaaS Academy. SaaS Academy is a company founded by Dan Martel. Love the guy. He's from New Brunswick. My dad's from there too. He now lives in BC, apparently. I'm from Montreal. So yeah, I love the guy. Ordered his book. Great book. Follow his content as well in many places. Just got to know Johnny. Johnny has an interesting background. We talked about everything from Rockefeller to values to scams to frauds. And yeah, Johnny's a cool guy. I can tell you that. Just before we start, the pod is brought to you by podfire.com, which is my podcast starting or scaling company. So if you want to start or scale a pod, get subscribers, get great guests like Johnny today, or insights, because we're going to drop a bunch of insights today. Well, you might want my help, podfire.com. John, I'm really glad to have you on. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about SaaS Academy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm the CRO of SaaS Academy. I've been with the company for about 2 years, but before that I was a client. So I ran a SaaS company for 7 years and was in the program as a client. I exited that company in 2019, stayed on for about 18 months after that with the acquirer. And then the opportunity came up to work side by side with Dan to keep on building SaaS Academy. And I knew from the day I got into SaaS Academy to be a part of the community for a long time, and opportunity came up in 2021 and have been here ever since. So today, a lot of my role looks like helping on the revenue side, bringing new customers in. So I've got our marketing and our sales team reporting into me. And then I also work on the delivery side. I'm the program director for our flagship program. We work primarily with B2B SaaS founders and help them grow from about 10K in monthly recurring revenue up to 250K, at which point they graduate into our higher end program. So I love our clients, love the team, and have a lot of fun.
Start by telling us about Silvertrack, because that's an interesting story. You started with a commission-only sales rep. At the time, you were still making 30K MRR, which is pretty good. It's not too bad. For every deal that you sold, you received 35% of the monthly payment for as long as the client had a subscription.
Yeah.
And as the sales rep, you were responsible for training and supporting the client. Tell that story. It seems quite impressive. And also tell us about that exit.
Yeah, it was fun. So my grandparents ran a security company. Silvertrack is a solution that helps security companies streamline their operation. It was kind of at that point in time when a lot of systems were converting from analog paper-based reporting into software solutions. So I, fresh out of college, went to go work for a small security company. I found Silvertrack as a client. I started using the product and I thought it was so game changing for the industry. I expected them to be, months, if not a year away from a large exit. Like, it was such a disruptive technology. So I used it really well, started growing the company quickly. And then one day I called the founder and of Silvertrack, and I just had some additional ideas I wanted to run past him. I valued his opinion and said, "Hey, can I pick your brain? I got an idea for a business I might start to serve the security industry." And he invited me down to Seal Beach to just learn about what he was working on. It turns out Silvertrack was super early stage. So I worked for the next 7 years alongside Chris Anderson and the founders at SaaS Academy. And the way we started working together was, like you mentioned, straight commission. I got 35% of everything I sold. And he brought on 10 guys to do the same thing. 3 months later, all the other 9 were gone. But I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my parents and telling them I was going to quit the main job to go work on a straight commission sales job. And they were like, "No, don't do that. It's too much risk." But I had experienced firsthand the transformation that it had on the company. So for 2.5 years, I just built up my own book of business. I focused on building systems for customer success, for sales, for marketing, to the point where I had a much larger book of business than the company itself. And so met with the founders and said, "Hey, why don't we bring this all together? There's no more straight commission sales reps around. You're the only one. Let's make you formally the CEO, and we'll keep on building." So fast forward through that, there were stops along the way. We did 100 podcasts ourselves back in 2015 when it was early stage. Content marketing and serving the industry was always a part of our strategy. And then in 2018, it became apparent that there were a lot more platforms. We were a bootstrap SaaS company. there were a lot of platforms and a lot of investments coming into this space. Over the course of several years, there's over $500 million being pumped into the space. And so we either had to like join the arms race and hire a development team and go get investments to keep building out the platform, or we had to go seek an acquisition. So it took us about 18 months to really figure out, like I tried a couple of things like raising a round of client funded round to put into the product, but our technical leader at the time just didn't have an interest in building out the team. So we landed on, hey, it was time to acquire, to look into getting acquired. We entered into due diligence with K1 Private Equity out of Los Angeles in February of 2019, spent 7.5 months or close to 9 months in due diligence, and finally exited on November 7th, 2019, which was timely because, as you know, a couple months later, COVID sent the world spinning into a bit of an unknown. I'm definitely glad that we exited and got through that prior to COVID.
Wow, dude. Quite impressive. So I often compare my background. Compare is not the right word, but just check both of us at the same age at the same time. I also had a mentor, but I could never scale his business, and I decided to branch out by my own quite quickly. Maybe it was the product, maybe it was the lack of serendipity here, but you seem to have hit the jackpot right from the get-go. You often reflect on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in a community full of entrepreneurs and founders. And so I often say, it's like, I have to this day not started my own company, but twice now I have, both with SilverTrack and then with SaaS Academy, had situations where I just fell more in love with the product that I had experienced and going and starting something new. So, I'm toying around with this idea and just teaching others how to do what I call intrapreneurship, that when you find the right founder and you find the right product, help bring an existing idea to life, and gain the experience. Like what I've learned over the last 10 years with zero skin in the game, the upside that I've experienced, I think that if it was a more popularized and well-known route, you might see a whole lot less people, get into life-altering debt and commitments to businesses without a whole lot of experience on how to scale it. So, I often reflect. I think it's there's times when I kick myself and say, hey, should I have branched out and should I have, forced the subject? I wasn't on the cap table when we exited SilverTrack. So great outcome, 8-figure exit. I got a lot of experience out of it. I certainly leverage that into other conversations and opportunities in the future. But there's times when I look back and say, hey, maybe I shouldn't have spent 7 years doing that. If I had the ability to build a business, why didn't I get into into the equity conversation? But, I've done that at SaaS Academy now, and feel just excited about where it's landed me. And I'm still young. I'm 33 years old. I got a lot left to offer. And I think at the time, I look back over the last 10 years, I enjoyed what I was doing every day. I enjoyed the problem that I was solving, the customers I was serving. I think maybe I would have been forced into entrepreneurship earlier on if I just hadn't loved the team that I was working on and, the problem I was solving.
So folks like you are pretty rare and of high value for folks like me. I'm a 0 to 1 guy. You're a 1 to 10, 1 to 100 guy. Do you think it's just because we're built different? Don't you think guys like you are way more in demand than guys like me?
I mean, I think that you just need, it's interesting. It's part of the human existence is that we need community, right? Without one, you don't have the other. And so I think it's what makes work fun, is that you get to go find the people that complement you really well. I didn't know this about myself 10 years ago. As I've gone through and learned more about how I work and learn more about how others work, I think I've developed an appreciation for both things. You're 100% right. I can't tell you the number of times that I've told my wife, I don't think I'm the 0 to 1 guy. I just can't help but see the 1 to 10. I walk into every business and I think about, if we could only do ABC, we can get this thing to the next level. So it was a while to being friends with and loving entrepreneurs in the entrepreneurial community, the startup community. There was a long time where that bugs me of why can't I just do it? I feel like I've got all the skills, and I don't know, maybe it's something about being in my 30s now. I just feel comfortable with the role that I'll play. There's plenty of founders out there that could use my help to go from, 1 to 10 or 10 to 100. So I don't know if you need one more than the other. You just need to find your right pair.
can tell you we need one more than the other. Quick experiment, quick thought experiment. You were 10, right? In your cohort. You're the only one that made it.
Yeah.
So that should tell you a lot of things. The second thing, yeah, like should have asked for shares or something. Yeah, you're kind of this nice guy, most probably. But yeah, I would have got some shares, especially if I helped, like make the acquisition happen. I mean, that's just, I'm not pointing finger or saying anything here. I'm just saying, guy like you have your talent, like, yeah, you should definitely get some skin in the game. And I think, yes, it's also just human nature, and how we are genetically and or environment and so forth. And yeah, at 33, I mean, you're probably building a family and so forth. So it's more about the stability. But for me, the stability is like constantly being in not a stress zone, but like launching, it's like building a fire and you're the guy
Yeah.
taking care of the fire. It's two different skills, by the way. Starting a fire is somewhat difficult. And then yeah, like maintaining the fire is also difficult. You need to make sure that the flame is at the bottom and that there's sufficient energy. You need to add pieces of woods, possibly have the others try to help you manage the fire. But my question for you is, like, me as a founder, I'm constantly looking for top COOs, constantly looking for top CEOs. Do you have a system or an idea of a system that I could use to get in touch with these folks and have them work for me? And I won't say like not de-risking that for me, but me, I'm looking for folks that want to have skin in the game,
Yeah.
almost
100.
like no salary and like, let's fucking go, I'm highly, highly valuable in the equation. But I do also need like these CEOs that will execute relentlessly. So do you have an hypothesis of a system that I can use for that?
Yeah. I think that what I value, I have a lower risk tolerance than you do. And so I think that you'd be hard pressed to find, you're going to find more of you that are willing to do it for no salary. To find the entrepreneur, that person's going to want more security and stability, but they still have the same pioneering skill set. Like I've done, my job changes every 3 and 6 months in every role that I'm in. It's like, I like pioneering, building, operationalizing, handing off to a team. Like I just go through that loop. You just go every 3 and 6 months through my career. That is the trail. And so I've gone from customer success into product, into sales, into marketing, like all over the place doing, following that method. So if I was to like say, hey, the system for you is you got to be able to provide the security that intrapreneur wants, the stability of maybe they don't get equity, but they want a great base salary. For me, I was at a time in life, I had student loans, I was starting a family. Like didn't make sense for me to go out and start something new. And I just was absent the idea that I became obsessed with. Like I couldn't set down the obsession of the product I was building. So I would say, based on my path, like it's probably somewhere in your community or your client base right now, someone who's just like a huge, like super passionate about what you're doing and your vision, but they've got a steady job and they'll always want to have a steady job. They won't go out and start their own thing. And because they're obsessed with your thing and they like high diversity in their role and their work life, they would be that pioneer, that number 2. And this is, by the way, I think this is what will mark the next like 5-10 years of my career, is teaching people how to become intrapreneurs and teaching founders how to foster entrepreneurship. Because I think that we'll see a lot less business failures if founders know the blueprint. And if employees know how to go from employee to owner, like into to having shares, and building wealth. Like there's oftentimes you hear people talk about the real way to build wealth is to go start a company. Well, like I think that there's another route where you become an entrepreneur, and let's just say that if I had 10% of shares in Silvertrack, like it's a totally different story. Like I'm building wealth. I think, I've got a similar partnership stake in SaaS Academy right now. When we go do what we're going to do, like at some point that will build, tremendous wealth. And I didn't have to be there from start. So, yeah, I think does that answer your question?
Yes, a lot. Thank you so much for that. By the way, we're gonna do a round two because we have like 1 minute left, and we didn't even get into like SaaS Academy, if you accept that is.
Yeah.
What about, like, I still have a question regarding that. What about rev share? What about, like, my plan is, okay, I'm the fire starter. I'll get this party started. Let's call it 0 to 1 to 5 to 10K a month, right? MRR. At the start, you get 50% of rev. And then there's like a vesting plan, right? What do you think about that strat?
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to do it. I mean, like the blueprint that we had at that was similar to what we did at Silvertrack. It was like I got 30% of it on a recurring basis. I had to support the whole, I mean, I got the product. I was essentially like a reseller of the product. I had to support from start to finish. You acquire the customer, support them, and onboard them, etc. So I think that model of, hey, you get 35% of this, but there's a little bit, the product's been taken care of. We know who the market is. We know who we're going after. We know how to solve the problem. And you just come in here and you get to make it what you want it to be. And I think there was something unique, like, there's something about the way that I was showing up that caused the Silvertrack founders to keep leaning in and investing more. Like, it was absolutely a mentor role. Like, I learned a tremendous amount from the guys that I worked with, and I just got a ton of experience. So I think it's, it's finding someone at that right stage, early 20s, or, early into their career, super hungry, humble, and ready to get after it. And, I think you can enroll them in the vision.
Thank you for reviving the hope in me. Yeah, maybe it's just about experimenting. I think I've got pretty near the 10 mark, trying 10 folks at the same time, having compete. Yeah, and maybe like 2 or 3 made it after a couple months, and then
if I could say the way to reduce that, and I don't have a hard stop right now. I don't know if you have a hard stop.
I do have one, yeah, but dude, you're fascinating. Like, we need to do a round 2. So how about you finish your thought there, and we rebook something like probably around next week.
Yeah. I think that the way to find traction is think about the attitude and the values that this person would have, and hire solely on that. Because the skills, you're going to trust that they can build the skills. Like, they won't know everything right now, but you're betting on the fact that they're hungry, they're aligned with your values, they're excited about your vision, and they will learn the skills along the way. You cannot change attitude. You can teach skills. So, like, most job descriptions, and I spent a lot of time in my early days at Silvertrack hiring on skills. Like, they had all of the requirements. I'm like, look, this sales rep should for sure work. Like, they've got all the experience, they said all the right things, but they just weren't an attitude or a values fit. And so you work with them for 3 to 6 months, and you can't figure out on paper why it didn't work. And then when I realized, like, I wrote down 7 core values, and I would go into interviews and I would just ask questions that told me that they had this value or not. And then I just started building like a really high performing team. There was something, like, Chris and I, to this day, we are incredible friends. Like, we'll be lifelong friends and family. Like, because there's this shared values. And so I think you find that person, that the value alignment's there, the attitude is there, the skills will work themselves out.
Dude, incredible value bombs there. And yeah, it got me realizing it's probably either me that wasn't a good teacher enough, because I had the attitude, they had the attitude, they had the values alignment with myself. So I always made sure of that, honesty, for example, and so forth. But I saw stagnation, whether because I didn't have the time to teach them, my reps, that is, and or maybe the product in itself needed reworking. So I think we can talk about that on next episode. Yeah. Where can people find out more about you, John?
Oh man, I should have this down. I think it's LinkedIn. It's at Johnny Page profile on there. Instagram, Johnny Page 13. I'm just starting to share more about this intrapreneurship idea. So find me on Instagram, Johnny Page 13, and love to have you along.
My man, I'm Charles, your host, CEO of Podbuyer. If you want to start or scale your pod, that was Johnny Page